Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming to learn about hydrogen. Hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe. It's the most abundant element in the sun, and has tremendous potential to help solve our energy issues. There's a lot of potential, also a lot of challenges, and we'll be going into both of those today. There's so much innovation that awaits the development of this energy source, and not just scientific innovation, but market innovation as well. And we've got 4 experts up here who can fill you in on that. And I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves, a couple minutes each, and then we'll launch into some questions and answers up here, and then we'll turn it over to you guys.
Hi, everyone. My name is Angelina Galiteva. So happy to be here. Thank you, Russ, for hosting this discussion. It's super exciting to talk about hydrogen all the time. I've always worked in the field of energy and specifically renewable energy, working with utilities, the LA Department of Water and Power, the New York Power Authority. I'm also on the board of the California Independent System Operator, one of the largest grid operators in the world that actually now has integrated 100% renewable energy on the grid, and we can reliably operate the grid on 100% renewable energy. So yay, California, but we still haven't got the ability to do it 24/7, 365 days a year, every day, every hour of every day. So we need a fuel. We need a fuel that can decarbonize and that can allow us to take that electricity and abundant electricity that we have, operate on 100% renewable energy 24/7, but also decarbonize all other areas of the economy, whether it's shipping, whether it's aviation, whether it's agriculture, whether it's heavy-duty trucking. We want to clean up the air, create new jobs, make sure that California remains the 4th largest economy and a powerhouse globally, and ensure that we have jobs, clean air, and economic prosperity for everybody. So I am now the CEO of ARCHES, the Alliance for Renewable Clean Hydrogen Energy Systems, and we are a hydrogen hub that encompasses all of California with the mission to decarbonize the economy while creating good quality jobs and benefiting frontline communities. And we believe we can do that because we have great partnerships with the ports, we have great partnership with our power system, and we have a great partnership with our transportation system. We need that carbon-free molecule that is based on clean electricity and clean resources. California's hub is a green hydrogen hub. And we know that we can succeed. We've been able to unlock a potential of not only $1.2 billion of investment from the DOE, and actually we're able to ink the contract, but we have a cost share of 10-to-1 with private and public investment, making this a $12 billion hub that can unlock an incredible potential in California, which after we send out an RFP is actually $56 billion worth, and we have more and more projects coming in. So I'm going to stop here. It's super exciting to talk about hydrogen as the epicenter of all renewables and all new technology innovation, because the future, if we want it to be carbon-free and carbon neutral across the board, needs a clean molecule, and the only option we have is hydrogen. Thank you.
Thanks. Mike?
Mike Galvin, I'm the Director of Waterfront and Commercial Real Estate with the Port of Los Angeles, and I've been with the Port for about 20 years and done various things within all business modes of the Port, from the cargo business to the liquid fuels business to waterfront visitor serving development, but focused on for the last 15 years our fuels business. That's what got me into the hydrogen part of the Port's business and where we need to go with zero emissions. So the ports have big goals to get to zero emissions on our terminals by 2030 and in the on-road trucking fleet by 2035. So that's about 4,000 pieces of equipment between the ports of LA and Long Beach by 2030, and about 20,000 plus trucks in the trucking registry between the 2 ports by 2035. So we need all technologies available out there to address those issues, and battery electric will suit some of those needs, but we have significant heavy-duty cycle equipment that needs to run 20 hours a day without being refueled, and in those situations, hydrogen is really the opportunity that we are looking to make sure the ports continue to run resiliently as they do today, and not to upset the apple cart of operations that we have today. So it's important to find a fuel that you can drop in and is resilient as diesel. And hydrogen is that fuel, and that's why we're working closely with the state of California and Arches to really unlock the marketplace and allow that to be the new zero emissions fuel of the future as we deploy hydrogen fuel cell technology throughout various cargo handling and on-road truck pieces of equipment. And we're looking forward to continue to work with Arches to set up the marketplace so that we can provide not just clean air for our communities, but also a better economic situation as production picks up and it becomes much more competitive with current fossil fuels.
Thanks. Rahul?
Thank you. My name is Rahul Gupta. I'm the Global Executive Advisor to Movin'On. We're a not-for-profit that's focused on sustainable mobility, decarbonization, electrification, as well as the customer-centered city. I'm representing Movin'On's efforts in hydrogen, specifically our engagement with the Port of Antwerp, where Movin'On is working with the Compagnie Maritime Belge and MCA with a 1.2 megawatt hydrolyzer. And CMB is producing dual fuel ships, everything from tugs all the way to ocean-going ships that are powered both by diesel as well as with hydrogen, as well as a partnership in terms of heavy-duty trucks that are leveraging hydrogen. So the driver can actually use either the fuel stack or the diesel to extend their trips. This is to do both cold ironing as well as to decarbonize the port. Europe, that's been a mandate for a very long time. And the exciting part is that this is what the US wants as well. So as you just heard from my colleagues on the right, there is a great opportunity to build that decarbonized future. By background, I got 15 years in the US government, the last 20 years in consulting. And I am finding that this infrastructure bill, as well as all of the associated funding coming from the DOE and EPA, can truly help make a difference in the U.S. infrastructure. Thank you.
Thanks. Patrick?
All right. I'm Patrick Noble. I'm an engineering manager at Modern Hydrogen, which is a startup in Seattle. We designed containerized units that convert natural gas into hydrogen. So we use a technology called methane pyrolysis. If you get natural gas super hot, you can split off that carbon atom. And what's really cool about that is you're literally decarbonizing the fuel, taking the carbon off the methane. And what's also great about that is we can sequester solid carbon much more easily than, say, pulling out CO2 from the air. So we make a decarbonized fuel, and then we take this carbon and we actually put it into asphalt and start to decarbonize that as a second kind of byproduct. We see this as a current low-cost way to decarbonize. Right now, from a technology standpoint, it's pretty difficult to ship and store and distribute hydrogen. Right now, we're bypassing that by saying we will convert natural gas using the existing natural gas infrastructure very close to the point of use into hydrogen. You use it right there. And because it's thermally driven, not electrically driven, it's a pretty low-cost way to decarbonize. So we're a producer looking for many end users, so that's why I'm here to talk.
Much. We're going to get to politics in a minute, but first I want to talk about challenges that don't involve politics. Obviously, there are challenges, or there would not be this huge effort behind pushing the market. So I'd like each of you, let's go in reverse order this time, to talk about what you see as the major challenges to developing hydrogen and getting it into the marketplace, eventually at affordable rates, and what each of your organizations is doing to help solve that challenge.
Yeah. When we give tours to prospective investors and customers in our lab, the first question is, how much electricity does it take to generate your hydrogen? What we're seeing is that green electricity, renewable electricity is pretty hard to come by right now. There's so many projects that want it. There's the data centers that are coming online we've all heard about, with huge demand in the future that want green electricity. So if we were to produce a new fuel that is green, they would love to avoid using as much green electricity as possible. So we see this as, like I mentioned earlier, the means of low cost and low carbon fuel. So basically, in the thesis of our product is to avoid one of the biggest hurdles I see is the availability of renewable resources.
Rahul.
It's a good question. And I think there are a few factors in place. First of all, you got to displace that something fairly cheap, right? Readily available. So you got to create a market, and for that you need both carrots and sticks. There is a issue with the supply chain. You need to actually generate, you need to distribute, and then you need the off-taker. And I think that's why the conversation about the ports is so important. So to create that market, you really need to have the ability to produce a product that is cost-effective and that's well understood. And I think we're on the cusp of having that capability. I just read that Hyundai is introducing an FCEV. BMW wants to use hydrogen in their internal combustion engine. So those are the kind of developments that makes it easier to actually go from large scale to small scale. So when you start going from ships, you start going into heavy duty, you start going into consumer, now you're building the service stack that makes it appealing. And I think the quicker you scale, I think the easier it is to actually create the economy. But you can't do it without some policy and some initial start. That's why I think the Arches program and some of the hubs are so important. The United States has already capability for distributing hydrogen through pipelines. It's going to build 2 of the largest caves in Utah to actually store hydrogen. So I think we are catching up and exceeding the global expectations for hydrogen. But at the end of the day, it's really developing that market.
I would agree with that. You're trying to displace a fuel that's 150 years in the making and that is extremely resilient, that the whole economy is built against, and that is relatively inexpensive. And so you have to be realistic when you're doing that it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take some time to be able to catch up to that fuel. And initially, it's not going to cost $1 a kilogram. It's going to cost a lot more than that. And so I think, some of what we've experienced in the last 5 years is expectations that are aspirational but not realistic. And so we need to get to a realistic point so that producers understand where the market, where they can meet the market, and that users can understand that it's not going to be, a quarter the cost of diesel, because that's not realistic now, and I don't know when it will be. But if we can go into it with a realistic focus point, that it's going to take some time. We need to address very specific market issues right now, which we were just discussing before this, which is the middle of the market. We have a lot of different pieces of demand. Rahul was mentioning that. There's demand on the marine shipping side. There's demand in hovercraft. There's demand for locomotives. There's demand for heavy-duty trucks and cargo handling equipment. All these little pieces, though, if not aggregated correctly, cannot build a market, because you can't send all those people out into the marketplace and expect them to fend for themselves and find a reasonable priced molecule. It's not going to happen. So that's why opportunities like the hubs and Arches can start to aggregate that market and help out with that, because we're asking our tenants at the Port of LA to take on new equipment, and that equipment is heavily funded by grants. But if you can't guarantee a supply and guarantee a reasonable price, which is probably like in the $7 to $9 a kilogram range at this point, then they're going to be resistant to even taking free equipment. So we need to get over that. That middle market needs to be addressed, and I think there's already movement to make that happen, but that's critical. And it's really important that this conversation has continued. I was in this room last year talking about different things, but the conversation has advanced to what pieces of the marketplace need to be addressed now to get rid of this anxiety or insecurity over supply and cost. And I think we're going to get there, but that's the critical piece that we really need to attack in the next year.
Thank you.
Absolutely, and everybody's right. We do need to build the market, and that's why Arches is dedicated to creating a marketplace and an ecosystem to ensure that we have hydrogen that is available, but that production and offtake are balanced, and that we have a system for transporting that hydrogen where it is needed. When we proposed the hub to the DOE, the vision was a holistic approach that's statewide and that encompasses the whole state in order to balance those three elements, right? Production, offtake, and transportation of hydrogen where it's needed. We needed to show that the state had credit-worthy off-takers, so that if producers are building a production plant, they have a guaranteed offtake. And of course, we focused on the most credit-worthy of all, the ports, the power plants, and the transit agencies that have mandates to decarbonize, mandates to purchase carbon-free equipment, and the ability to pay for it long-term with an experience in power purchase contracts and purchasing contracts of fuels long-term. So when we issued an RFP for the initial projects for Arches, and Arches has 37 of them that we selected that create that ecosystem, we got hundreds of proposals back. There is an ecosystem in California already, but it's patchwork. It's not coordinated, and it's very difficult for small individual players to be able to operate and balance those three elements individually. So the hub can have the ability to be that aggregator and that ecosystem. We got a proposal of over $56 billion, as I said, of potential projects, credit-worthy projects in California that can be developed. Out of those, we selected the 37 that were proposed to the DOE, out of which we have large-scale power plants in downtown LA transitioning to 100% hydrogen. They'll have the ability to blend from 20% to 100, but that provides visibility again for production. Large-scale offtake is available, and if you supply the hydrogen, it will be purchased and that plant can operate on it. Another plant in Northern California is doing the same thing. Transit agencies, we have 15 transit agencies participating, already utilizing hydrogen, some of them operating 50 buses, they're buying 30 additional buses. They have secured some hydrogen at a very high premium, and the only plea they have is, as you pointed out, Mike, give us a secure supply of fuel with a fixed price for at least 5 years so we have visibility into the market. California has moved markets before. We've done it with renewables. Solar, 15, 20 years ago, and wind were the most expensive resources, so were batteries. We have had a curve reduction in price because of policies and because of smart market development to where renewables coupled with storage are now the cheapest resource on the grid. We can do the same with hydrogen. We know what it takes. We need that transparency in policy. We need longevity in terms of all the frameworks. And we need consistency in terms of being able to supply and purchase that energy. And hydrogen can follow the same path. I'm very, very optimistic and very bullish that we can make it happen. We know we have the producers. The producers are ready to create that hydrogen. They need to have the connection with the off-takers, not just one or two, because we need to produce at scale to bring that cost down, but to many. And we can ensure that we can make that connectivity. We need to be able to transport that hydrogen with hydrogen fuel cell buses and trucks. And we can do that by creating an opportunity for market development in California and even production in California of those new technologies. Why not? Tesla was created here and grew here. We can have hydrogen fuel cell manufacturing, hydrogen ships, hydrogen heavy-duty equipment, and hydrogen buses and trucks produced in California, or at least assembled in California. So the opportunities are vast. The issue is, how do we maintain that market? How do we keep the momentum and ensure that there isn't a boom and a bust, which is the biggest problem for renewable and any other technology, as a matter of fact. So we need to continue, and we need to make sure that people are aware of the potential, the momentum, the opportunities, and seize it. Because without hydrogen, without the clean molecules, we cannot achieve our climate goals of decarbonizing the economy across the board. We can't decarbonize shipping, we can't decarbonize aviation, steel, heavy-duty industry, or anything else. We need that fuel, and we need the molecule.
Thanks.
Russ, do you mind if I jump
yeah.
in with a question? We talked a lot about cost. What do you see as the biggest cost drivers for hydrogen right now from your perspective?
Speculation and shortage. The price went from about $12 a kilogram to $36 a kilogram, and it's holding steady over there. So we need more supply, we need more diversity of supply, and we need a pathway for more fueling and opportunities for offtake to drive that price down again. But we need competition.
That's right. There's the market right now, especially in Southern California, is set up to feed the refining industry, and there's very little excess. And so as you enter new participants in the marketplace, whether it be passenger cars or our own, and they're only looking for maybe 200 kilograms a day, it's very hard to get that off of the base load of what's being produced. And so that is being priced at a huge premium because there's so many little pieces pulling at that. And so the more producers that we have to create a more consistent and competitive market, and we need incentives to get there because we're, like I said, competing with this incumbent fuel that has all kinds of historical amenities to get us there, to get them where they want to go. So we definitely need that. We need all the help possible in all these different sectors to be able to reduce that price over time, but be realistic. It's gonna be more than diesel for a period of time, but eventually you can probably get to parity.
Appreciate that. From a technology perspective, I was curious how far from that technology entitlement we are. It sounds like we're pretty far. It's all market-driven right now.
But with a steep opportunity for price reductions at a very accelerated pace.
Yeah, I would think that when you're talking about fragmentation and you're talking about a well-developed system for diesel and for fuel, there's a combination of factors at play here. So we're talking about California, but when you start looking at the other hubs, the question that becomes, how do you actually tie this together? Because in a market that's focused on supply and demand, you need to make sure that the supply goes to where it's needed because that will drive effectively the price parity. So the levelized cost of the hydrogen kilogram needs to be reflected. It's right now regional. I think you need to go to the national level and to say, can we create that economy? Because then you're going to get the scale that you need to get to that where the price per kilogram is competitive.
Great. Do you have more?
No, I was just going to say, and we can get there. We can get there by, California, again, fourth largest economy. We drive markets. We can drive a market. We have the offtake. We need the production. We need to scale the production. We're already talking with the Pacific Northwest Hub in terms of integrating the I-5 corridor all the way up to Canada. And we're talking to Texas to have a corridor from Houston to LA, aptly named High LA, which would be great. So the opportunities are there, the desire is there. We need to scale production and the end users and create a liquid market for a liquid commodity. Again, as fast as we can. The hydrogen hubs have to reach their goals by 2032, which means we need to build the projects, we need to drive the price down, and we need to scale. That's not a lot of time for major infrastructure projects, which means we need to move really fast.
Great. Now to politics and the idea of moving fast. I want to introduce some comments that soon-to-be president again, Donald Trump, was quoted in the Wall Street Journal recently. On Monday night in Atlanta, Donald Trump described a made-up scenario in which GOP Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia blew up while driving a hydrogen car. Greene, quote, with that beautiful blonde hair, is driving down the highway in a hydrogen car, he said. And the problem with a hydrogen car, if something goes wrong, it's like the atom bomb went off. You're not recognizable. They'll say, we thought it was Marjorie Taylor Greene riding down in the middle of the turnpike, but she's no longer recognizable. And then he said, we found some of her. So that gives you an indication not only of, he's into personal character, but of his stand going into this on hydrogen. Do you think that there are going to be people around him that are going to change his mind, and how much of an impediment will it be if he doesn't?
Well, in my opinion, there will be smart people around him, I hope, that do change his mind and don't believe the Jewish lasers are controlling the temperature of the environment and causing hurricanes to happen. But, I'm hopeful that there will be an opportunity to realize what the facts are. And recently I was touring one of the transit agencies, the Orange County Transit Agencies that operates a lot of hydrogen buses, and they love their hydrogen buses because they operate just like Mike said, just like the diesel bus, just like the CNG bus. You can see the diesel pump, the CNG pump, the hydrogen pump, and they fuel the same way, and they can maintain the buses the same way, seamlessly integrated into operation. But they don't have diesel fumes. They're very quiet, and there's no vibration, so you can actually have conversations in the bus, and the drivers are super excited because they say that they go home much happier because they haven't been breathing bad air and being jerked around in a bus all day. So they like the hydrogen bus. So I asked them about safety in terms of fueling and in terms of operation. And they said, we have good experience with battery buses, we have good experience with hydrogen buses, and the issue is if a battery catches fire, you can't stop it. So the battery cars do have an issue. And they said, and asked safety. What about the hydrogen for safety? People are concerned. The example that they gave me hands down was they said, if you have a diesel car, a hydrogen car, and a battery car in an accident, what car would I want my family in? Hands down, everybody said the hydrogen car. Because hydrogen, if there's an accident, poof, it goes in the air and dissipates. Nothing, no explosion, not even a ripple. Batteries have a problem with catching fire and burning, and you can't stop that. And we all know what gasoline and diesel cars have some issues as well. So hydrogen is inherently safe. We know how to handle it. We've operated it. California is the second largest hydrogen market in the United States. We have hydrogen pipelines running under the ports and under Los Angeles and Long Beach. Nobody even knows about it. There's never been an issue. There's never been a leak. There's never been an explosion. And they've been there since the 70s. So we know how to operate the infrastructure safely. The power plants will be even safer with operating on hydrogen. So will the pipelines. So will our vehicles. And I think it's an issue of education. There's a little bit of a misperception, I think, that is spread throughout the community that we need to overcome a little bit.
Yeah, and that's very important to point out. I'm wondering, though, it indicates a hostility toward hydrogen, and politically, in terms of government support, federal government support, what are you expecting, fearing from the Trump administration?
Well,
Anybody?
I would think that a car doing 80 miles an hour hits a tree, doesn't matter what kind of car it is, you're going to have the exact same result. So it has nothing to do with the hydrogen. I would focus on energy security. I think if you're going to decarbonize and you're going to solely focus on solar or on wind, you need to still have another green molecule. And as far as I'm concerned, if it is all about national sovereignty and energy sovereignty, hydrogen gives you that opportunity. Doesn't matter where you are. And the fact that we have investment from the Department of Energy, we've got grants coming from EPA, we've got push to decarbonize and using electric vehicles, you can actually look at hydrogen for both energy sovereignty and energy security. That's why I think it's such an important issue.
And sorry, if you want a boon of hope, before there were even hydrogen tax credits, we saw a lot of pull from cities and states. It's much more local that pulls for the decarbonized fuel source. So regardless of what the federal administration is doing, carrots or sticks, most of our customers are actually far more localized, and the local groups, even in the red states, want decarbonization.
California's going to continue to do what we're doing here. We're going to push the market, but we have to remember the Hydrogen Hub initiative is a national initiative. There are different feedstock availability throughout the hub specifically for that purpose, is to create a national marketplace with different opportunities over time that will eventually green into a renewable marketplace nationally. But there are opportunities in all of these states to benefit economically, and it goes from the potential energy producers all the way down to the grassroots level, to what Angelina was saying, the actual operators. And I think between the operators and the citizens that will benefit from the clean air, that's where you build that groundswell, because our operators say the same thing. They love the equipment. They love how it runs. They love that there's no emissions coming out of it. It operates as resiliently as diesel does. So it makes all of those things work for them, and they can be the voice of reason in bringing this to fruition. So I think we really have to rely on that level of the economy to be able to sell this up and make it an important issue politically.
Is any of the hub money at risk?
I would like to add one thing to
Okay,
what
sorry.
Mike just talked about. You brought up perception. I think that's a very, very important element of the conversation. If the term hydrogen fades into the background and you just get the benefit of being able to motorize and to generate the energy, that's what you want. You want people not to think about that I'm using hydrogen to power my equipment. How it is produced, where it's produced. So I think there is a role for media and for the trade association to explain, and I think this is where Angelina was going, that it is very safe. This is no longer, the Zeppelin times. This is something much different. And I think that plays into the psyche of how you can move from an existing fuel source to a very clean fuel source. And that is also a point of competition. We don't want to arrive there second or third. We want to be there first.
Good.
Right. And the reliability and resiliency point cannot be understated. And also it's inflation proof because you have predictable electricity prices that can make the hydrogen. You can have it off-grid even more predictable in terms of what the prices are. There's very little volatility. And there are the benefits, the environmental benefits of clean air. You're getting diesel off the road. You're decarbonizing areas that you can't decarbonize with direct electrification or even batteries. I mean, the agricultural sector, we can bury batteries in the sand we all want to, but we can't pretend it's fertilizer. And you need hydrogen for the fertilizer too. We import our fertilizer. We're the breadbasket of the West, and decarbonizing that area is extremely important. But the calculation that we did, just as an example for Arches, just the 37 projects that we're doing as part of this DOE program that unlock the potential for everything else, and we want to be able to bring in as many projects and make sure that they're actually completed as well. The DOE funding is $1.2 billion that we received, and we're the largest hub. Don't forget that there's an additional $10 billion of private and public funding that's coming from California and our partners here as well. We need to make sure that those investors feel secure continuing to invest in that technology. The clean air benefits are tangible. $2.96 billion of savings every year, year after year, in healthcare cost savings, fewer deaths, fewer asthma, fewer missed work and school days for our communities across the board, especially the most disenfranchised of all. 200,000 new high-quality jobs, family-sustaining careers. Those are numbers that every economy is going to want, and hydrogen provides that, whether it's California, whether it's North Dakota, or whether it's Texas. It's all the same.
Regarding the funding, so our hub is, over $10 billion, and the federal government is 10% of that, right? And so that $1.2 billion is neither going to make or break the market in the end of the day. And so although we need as much as we can get, and we need policy, more importantly, to incentivize the production and use of hydrogen, it's not going to break it down, because the actual hub in Southern California is probably really needs to be more like $50 billion to actually implement everything that we're talking about from a fully integrated system. So we have to remember that. It's important, but in the end of the day, it will not kill us if something were to happen with that funding, if it were to be delayed or curtailed or whatever it may be. Important for us to focus on it and to make sure that we secure it as quickly as possible if there is going to be an issue, but also important to understand that it is a smaller part of the overall equation.
I'd like to come back to what Patrick started with, what you're developing. If we're going to be rebuilding our infrastructure, our roads, bridges, and everything that goes with renewing infrastructure 2.0, our first infrastructure bill was during the Eisenhower era, and this is the second time we've done it. You're going to need steel and concrete, and that is heavy-duty industry that uses a whole lot of power. I would believe that local generation and production using hydrogen as a green molecule to produce and provide that energy, whether it's in California or around the United States, gives you that energy security. So I'd like to turn it to Patrick to kind of talk about how you are providing that capability to sequester carbon and also provide that energy into some of the most intensive industries where hydrogen could be the provider of the off-taker.
Yeah, thanks. One of our main thesis when we started this whole methane pyrolysis attempt at my company was that for heat, fuel is the best place you get your energy, not renewable electricity. Now, there's just so much more chemical potential essentially locked up in those molecules. natural gas now, eventually hydrogen. So the heavy industry is a great place to use hydrogen to get those high temperatures with a low carbon molecule or no carbon molecule. And the other side of our product that makes carbon, we sequester that into asphalt, and what we're doing is actually displacing bitumen, which is the binder, it's the gooey stuff that's in asphalt. It's actually the nastiest stuff that's in there. So we were trying to decarbonize what actually goes in the infrastructure with essentially our byproduct. And what's cool about that also is, our method of making hydrogen is very distributed. Like I mentioned before, it's like at the point of use where you want their hydrogen, you are converting natural gas into hydrogen, but also our carbon can then be distributed locally amongst those infrastructure projects.
Great. One more question from me, and then I'm going to turn it over to you guys for Q&A. Elon Musk has the ear of Donald Trump for various reasons. He, too, has been hostile to hydrogen fuel cell trucks, and I'm wondering whether there's any fear that Elon Musk will have some sway that could poke some holes in the argument for hydrogen and for fuel cell trucks.
I would say that at the end of the day, when you asked the question, and I think one of the answer was, we're hoping that there are smart people around making the right business decisions. And I would answer in a very similar way. The hostility comes from having a business entanglement. Hostility comes from not knowing or choosing not to know that this is a safe product. But at the same time, I think there's a recognition and realization that this is as much about energy sovereignty as it is about energy security. So when we think about those who are considering the social impact, the business impact, and the national security impact, the intersection of these three activities in the medium, the short, the medium, long term actually will give you a very clean answer. No pun intended. It will give you a no carbon answer. And so I think there will come a time where you will realize that the rest of the world is moving on and you have a lead that you can retain, that you can maintain, and even accelerate. Because I agree with what Angelina and Mike talked about, and to the extent that Patrick is developing that business, you're going to create some very high-paying job that will result in the next generation of how you power transportation and you create mobility. And whether that is production for transportation, heavy industry, and even for the flying industry, right? So we're talking about an activity which we go back 120 years, and we look at where cars were. There was an electric car, there was a steam car, and then we found gasoline. 1 gallon has 33.4 kilowatts of capability. Well, hydrogen is that new medium, right? So there will be a business innovator out there, and it may not have to be the name that we all think, that's going to come out and say, this is what I want to do, and this is going to take off. And that's what I think the market is going to bet on.
Great. Angelina? Oh, Mike? Either way.
I was just going to say that it also, people have different attitudes towards hydrogen or battery electric technology because they do have different business interests. But I think in the end of the day, the users are going to determine which way the market goes. And the users are going to figure out what works the same way that the equipment they have today is. And we're already seeing it at the ports, what works from a maintenance perspective, what works from an operational perspective. Battery electric works in a lot of situations that are lower duty cycle type situations. And so there's a placement for that. But in the higher duty cycle situations, whether it's on-road trucks or heavy duty equipment that has to run almost all day without refueling, we've seen what it does and what it doesn't do. And hydrogen has that ability. And so the operators are going to figure that out. The owners of the equipment are going to figure that out. They're going to have a lower cost of equipment over the entire life of the equipment, and their users, their employees are going to have a better experience. And so I think that will eventually drive the market. We're a little bit behind right now because there is more battery electric equipment out there in the marketplace, but I think we're catching up very fast. And I think the owners and users will determine where the market goes from there.
And there's plenty of space in the market for everything and for everybody. There's plenty of space for batteries where batteries are useful. If we can directly electrify a medium, we should do it, hands down. Zero-emission vehicles, whether they're battery-operated or hydrogen-operated, all have batteries. Batteries are included in all the hydrogen operational vehicles. So the market is common. As for the trucks, I mean, again, it's going to depend on what duty can be performed by what fuel. But you're also going to have a battery, and you're going to have hydrogen. And Elon Musk is a smart man. He just unveiled a hydrogen Tesla. So he's moving in the right direction, and it would be quite hard to fly a spaceship to Mars only on batteries. You're going to need a fuel. And you can't fly airplanes only on batteries as well. And heavy-duty industry and shipping, it'll be, I mean, a cargo ship on batteries, they'd just be carrying the batteries around the ocean.
We always say you can either haul cargo or you can haul the battery, right? And so the batteries modernly are very heavy, and in the future maybe they won't be, but Angelina makes a good point that you have to factor in all those things as you find those technologies that are going to adapt.
And the energy system is going to be very diversified. We need the diversity. You need it to be decarbonized. You need it to be democratized. You're going to have smaller scale utilization, microgrids and smaller vehicles, larger areas that need a fuel. And you're absolutely going to need peaker plants that operate on the fuel to maintain a reliable grid, even if it is mostly renewable based. So we do need that diversity. We do need that democratization of energy and everybody being able to choose what it is. And the operators are actually going to make that choice for us as well. But having a carbon-free fuel and a molecule to complement the carbon-free kilowatt hour, that's what you want if you're going to be a leader in the future as well, and have the benefits of clean air, jobs, and economic prosperity.
Thanks. Okay, I'm going to open up for questions. First, a personal plug for me. I wrote a story about arches and hydrogen hubs in
It was the best story ever.
Well, thank you very much. In the LA Times, and thank you for saying so. And I have to. I'm usually pretty modest, but I agree that it did a pretty good job of covering the territory in kind of a small space. So if you're new to the hydrogen front and you want to learn more about it, I suggest you go there. So, questions? Yes. What will the governor or legislature do in face of the election, basically?
Well, we're positive. We still think this project is going to move forward. There's no indication from the DOE that they're faltering. We actually have signed a contract that is moving forward as well. That being said, as Mike pointed out and I have been saying, the federal funding is $1.2 billion. The state funding and the local funding from California, and California being a leader, is matching it 10-1. So we want to ensure that the commitment that California and the projects have started continues, because there is a reason for that. If anything, the hubs in the hub program were a catalyst. They were a catalyst to get all of us together to realize that this is a market, that this is a huge potential, and that we can collectively achieve the goals of lower price and scale quickly. We need to continue that. We can create that transparency, longevity, and consistency in California, get the quality jobs, get the economic development, most of all, get the health benefits. The hub pays for itself. $2.96 billion in health savings, that's huge. And then the environmental externalities that are doubled with the cleaner air and the better experience, and making sure that California is a better place for everybody and a beacon of hope that it continues to be. My God, why wouldn't we do that? And the legislature is committed to arches. The governor was at the rollout of arches. He actually rode in a hydrogen ferry boat in Oakland. And he was there with the Undersecretary of Energy and with some other dignitaries and with Senator Padilla. And the greatest experience on that boat is, do you know what the byproduct is of a hydrogen ferry boat? Clean air you can drink. And actually they have a spigot there at the fuel cell where you can drink the water, and it's great tasting water, and those people claim they were water connoisseurs. So why not have a vehicle that performs exactly the same way, except clean, that doesn't pollute the water and doesn't pollute the air? And we're also developing a hydrogen ship for scientific exploration. And I'll just end at this because it's another exciting initiative. Because it doesn't have vibrations and because it's quiet, the scientists can map the ocean floor and actually track the ocean wildlife a lot better than they can on a diesel ship. So why not? Why not carry our cargo better? Why not keep our oceans cleaner? Why not keep our air cleaner? Why not create jobs? Why not create reliability, security, resiliency with the opportunity of reducing the price? Because let me tell you, the opportunity to reduce the price of fossil is not there. That price is only going up.
Hello. Hi, I'm with Engineering News Record. Angelina, we tried to get you on our panel next Monday for our infrastructure forum. Sorry you couldn't make it.
I was out of town, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Mike, your boss is going to be on that panel, though, so we're happy to have him. And Rahul, I've been to several Movin'On conferences as well in Montreal. But my question is actually for Patrick. Are you conducting any test pilots with any state DOTs or other highway agencies on this asphalt bitumen replacement?
Yes, actually, we've done several rounds of testing with independent labs. It's actually regional labs, so like the Midwest has a lab, I think UW, Wisconsin. And then we've done a lot of asphalt placement in Texas, where it's super hot, obviously. And what they've shown so far is actually it's stronger. So it's kind of continues to be a win-win for us. To be honest, we set out to make hydrogen, and we found a product pull for carbon. And right now it's making it more decarbonized, and it's a stronger, better product, and eventually cheaper. So worked out pretty well.
Thanks. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Hi, this question is for Mike. Around the world, you see certain projects popping up for hydrogen that kind of are in conjunction with other industries like offshore wind, and kind of the synergy between kind of electrolysis offshore, producing it and kind of centralizing it around the port. I know that the port of Long Beach, for example, is trying to set up logistics for the offshore wind industry here. Do you see any types of synergies also happening here with arches, let's say port development and potentially the offshore wind industry?
Both ports are actually working on different projects to supply the offshore wind business. That business is not going to happen locally. It's going to happen up in Central California, Northern California. But they need a port of logistics to be able to launch the equipment, to be able to have enough land to do that. And so both ports have different projects that are ongoing. One is a landfill project at the Port of Long Beach to do that. One at the Port of LA is using different ways to do that, actually in a more expedited manner, not having to require a landfill, but doing that using lift ships coming out of the ocean and being able to construct the equipment there and then send it out. But both will be necessary to outfit the growing potential for wind generation offshore, but it won't be happening close to the port, so it won't create the electricity close to the port to be able to create any significant amount of hydrogen there.
You have time for one more
If I
question?
can-
Oh,
If I
sorry.
can
Go ahead.
jump on
Sorry.
that. So when we
Please.
talk about some of the ports investments outside the United States as a leading practice, so some of the ports in Europe and some of the ports in the Middle East are considering local production, and it's all green hydrogen because they've got the combination of wind and solar that's built into it, and then feeding that as a feedstock. But I think it goes back to how do you actually create enough so that you're meeting the needs of all of the different off-takers and at the same time sequester. So that is something that's going on fairly regularly outside the U.S., and we're hoping that that's what happens exactly in the U.S. as well.
And opportunities are great for wind power too, not just for producing hydrogen, which is great, but also for integrating into the electricity network. As you know, we are shutting down a lot of our once-through Cooley gas-fired power plants, but the infrastructure is there on the shore. So you can have offshore wind feeding into existing infrastructure and powering the grid with additional renewables. And having more wind and having more solar and having that overgeneration where we curtail energy. In fact, last year we curtailed enough solar and wind energy to be able to produce all the hydrogen we need by 2030. So now we can actually scale more renewables without the fear of curtailment because we can use the excess energy to make hydrogen, which is absolutely important. And then use that fuel to power either the energy system or the transportation system or any of the other industries we talked about. So it's that nice synergy and combination that hydrogen and the carbon-free molecule allows us to have, literally sunshine in a bottle. And that's what we need. And we have the energy to do it. And we're bringing more and more renewable electricity to the grid. And we need more and more electricity to decarbonize not only the transportation center, but all the data centers and all the AI that's coming in. So we have to be able to utilize those systems in the most optimized fashion. And hydrogen, and of course charging batteries, pumped hydro, and other technologies allow us to do that.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to thank the panelists for all the helpful, useful information and educating us further about hydrogen. Thanks to CoMotion LA for hosting this entire event. And thank you all for coming and being so attentive. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure we all do. So thanks. Have a good lunch.